Camille moved first. That was the thing people never understood about her. She didn't wait for situations to resolve themselves. She walked into them. So when the black car pulled up outside Golden Hour Bakery on a Tuesday afternoon and a man she had never seen in her life rolled down the window and said, "Mrs. Yoon, someone would like a word," Camille didn't scream. She didn't run. She looked at the man for 3 full seconds, untied her apron, folded it over the counter, and said to Destiny, "Call Marcus. Tell him a black car. Plate starts with 7. Destiny grabbed her arm. "Camille, you are not getting in that car. I'm already getting in that car." That is literally what people say right before they disappear. Camille pried Destiny's fingers off her wrist gently, the way you do when you've made up your mind and you need the other person to know it without a fight. "Call Marcus," she said again. And then she walked out the door and got in. But that Tuesday was not where the story started. To understand why Camille got into that car without flinching, you have to understand what 3 years of silence does to a woman. You have to go back to before she was Camille. Back to when she was just Camille, loud laugh, soft heart, flower on her elbows, and absolutely no idea what she was walking into. It started at a wedding, not hers. A mutual friend's reception in Dilworth, the kind with an open bar and a live band that played one good song, and then pivoted to generic jazz for the rest of the night. Camille was on her 3rd glass of something sparkling when she saw him. He was standing near the far end of the room, alone, not in the uncomfortable way people stand alone when they want company and don't know how to ask for it. He was alone the way a person is alone when they chose it, fully settled in his own silence, watching the room without needing anything from it. Tall, dark suit, an almost smile that suggested he found people interesting without finding them necessary. Camille found that fascinating. "Don't," Destiny said from beside her, reading her the way she'd been reading her since 7th grade. "I'm just going to say hello. You are going to disrupt that man's entire piece, and you know it." Camille was already walking. She introduced herself with the confidence of someone who had never once worried about rejection. He said his name was Kai. He said it the way people say things they've said 1,000 times, flat, unhurried, no performance in it. She asked him if he was enjoying the wedding. He said he didn't particularly enjoy weddings. She asked him why he came. He said the groom was the closest thing he had to a friend. "That's either very loyal or very sad," she said. "Probably both," he said. And then, barely, almost reluctantly, he smiled. That smile cost him something. She could tell. And that was the thing that did it, really. Not his height, not his suit, not the quiet. It was the fact that his smile looked like something he didn't give away easily. Camille had always been drawn to things that required patience. 6 months later, she knew she was right about him. Kai called when he said he would. He remembered that she hated coriander and that her favorite season was the first week of October and that she had a complicated relationship with her father that she'd only mentioned once in passing. He showed up, physically, consistently, without being asked. When she had a hard day at the bakery, he didn't try to fix it. He just sat near her, which was somehow exactly right. Her mother, Mama Loretta, watched all of this with the quiet assessment of a woman who had lived long enough to know the difference between a feeling and a fact. One evening over dinner, she set down her fork and said, "He treats you well, baby. I'm not saying he doesn't. I'm saying feelings aren't the same as knowing somebody. I know him, Mama. You know how he makes you feel. That's a start. It's not a finish line." Camille heard her. She chose not to listen. She was 31, and she was in love, and the wedding was small and beautiful, and she danced until her feet hurt. For 4 months, she was happy in a way she hadn't expected marriage to feel. Uncomplicated, easy, like something that had always been waiting for her to arrive. Kai was present. He was warm, in his particular quiet way. He came home. Then he went to the meeting with Ryan. She didn't know much about Ryan then. She knew he was important to Kai in a way that had no clean explanation, that Kai had grown up in his orbit after his parents died, that there was a debt between them that didn't live on paper. She knew that when Kai talked about him, which was rarely, his voice went a specific kind of flat, the way voices go when someone is being careful. Kai came home from that meeting at 11 p.m., and he kissed her on the forehead, and he went to bed without eating. She didn't think much of it that first night, but she thought about it every night for the next 3 years, replaying it like footage, trying to identify the exact moment her husband became a stranger in a house she lived in alone. The change wasn't dramatic. That was the cruelest part of it. There was no argument, no confession, no single scene where everything fell apart, and she could point to it and say, "There, that was it." It was quieter than that. It was Kai coming home at 10 instead of 7, then 11. Then not texting when he was running late because at some point he stopped assuming she was waiting. She was. She just stopped letting him see it. Have you tried just asking him what's going on? Destiny said one Sunday morning, sitting on Camille's kitchen counter eating one of the test pastries Camille had brought home. I have asked him. And he says work is heavy. He says he's tired. He says he's fine. Destiny chewed. He sounds exhausting. He's not. He's just. Camille stopped. She didn't have the word. That was the problem. Kai wasn't cruel. He wasn't checked out in the obvious ways. He still came home. He still occupied the space of a husband. But somewhere in the mechanics of the marriage, the warmth had been rerouted somewhere she couldn't access. She tried. She made his favorite meals and left them covered on the stove. She asked about his day with the specific questions of someone who had been paying attention. She suggested weekends away, dinners out, things that required him to be present in rooms that weren't full of whatever was consuming him. He would say yes, then cancel, then apologize briefly, with the clipped remorse of someone who felt guilty, but not enough to change anything. By year 2, Camille had stopped setting 2 plates for dinner. She ate standing at the kitchen counter, which she told herself was because she was tired and not because sitting at the table alone felt like a performance of loneliness she wasn't ready to give. The bakery was what saved her. Golden Hour sat on a corner in Noda, and from the outside it looked like exactly what it was: small, warm, handmade. Brown butter and vanilla hit you at the door. Pale wood, soft lighting. A chalkboard menu that Camille redid every week because she loved the ritual of it, the proof that something in her life was hers to shape. Destiny ran the front counter with the energy of someone who had been told all her life she was too much and had decided to lean into it completely. She knew every regular by name and order and whatever personal drama they'd shared the last time they visited. She was loud and sharp and fiercely protective of Camille in the way only people who've known you since you were 12 can be. Camille was a different person here. She was loud here, quick to laugh, quick to argue about pastry technique, deep in flour and opinion and genuine engagement. She knew her customers. She cared about them. When a regular named Gerald came in looking hollowed out after losing his mother, Camille sat with him for 40 minutes and didn't charge him for anything. This was her real life. The penthouse was where she slept. Then the Meridian called. It was the kind of contract that didn't happen to small bakeries, an exclusive partnership with one of Charlotte's most visible luxury hotels. Pastries in every room, every boardroom meeting, every curated event. It would change everything. The hotel's creative director came in to talk through the details. His name was Elias Brooks, and he arrived like someone who had nowhere else to be, which immediately Camille found refreshing. He sat at the counter, ordered a coffee, and asked her real questions about the bakery. Not the business speak questions, but the ones that showed he'd done his research and was genuinely curious about what he found. Your lemon cardamom tart, he said. That's not on any menu I can find online. Where'd that come from? My grandmother, Camille said. She never measured anything. I spent 2 years trying to reverse engineer it. Did you get it right? Close enough that it makes me miss her, which I think is what she would have wanted. Elias smiled. It was a warm smile, uncomplicated, the kind that didn't cost anything. That's the one we want for the hotel rooms, he said. They worked late nights for 3 weeks, developing recipes, refining packaging, building something Camille was genuinely proud of. She laughed in those late sessions in a way she hadn't in 2 years, and she noticed it the first time it happened, that flicker of recognition. Oh, there you are. She started arriving home at 3 a.m. Kai would be asleep, or still out, or somewhere in the penthouse doing whatever the penthouse version of disappearing looked like. She didn't mention Elias. Not because anything was inappropriate. Nothing was. But because Kai hadn't asked about her day in so long that it didn't occur to her to offer the information. That was the state of them. Not fire. Not wreckage. Just 2 people in the same apartment, breathing the same air, living in separate directions. And then Destiny posted the photo. It was a candid. Camille doubled over at something Elias had said, one hand on the counter for balance, completely unguarded. Elias was mid-laugh beside her. Both of them looked like people who were genuinely glad to be exactly where they were. Destiny posted it with a caption about Black women thriving and went back to watching her show. By the next morning, it had 43 likes and several comments that all said some version of the same thing. She's glowing. Kai saw it at 11:42 p.m. He was in the living room when he came across it, scrolling through nothing in particular, the way people scroll when they're not sleeping but they're not doing anything either. The photo stopped him. He looked at it for a long time. He didn't think it was an affair. That wasn't what hit him. What hit him was simpler and worse. The recognition that his wife looked like that, lit up and alive like that, and it wasn't because of him. It used to be because of him. He remembered being the reason she laughed like that. He couldn't remember exactly when he stopped being. He set his phone face down on the cushion beside him and sat in the dark for a long time. His phone buzzed. Marcus, we have a problem, Marcus said when Kai picked up. Someone's been sitting on Camille for 2 weeks. Rotating positions. Not random. Kai was quiet for a moment. You're sure it's not ours? Positive. Whoever it is, they're not connected to us. Kai looked at the dark window across the room. Something in him that had been dormant for a long time came back online. Sharp, alert, protective. Find out who, he said. Tonight if you can. He hung up. He looked at the ceiling. Then, almost without deciding to, he got up and went to bed at a reasonable hour for the first time in months. The next morning, he was home when Camille woke up. She stood in the kitchen doorway and looked at him sitting at the table with coffee and said nothing, because she had learned a long time ago not to perform hope in front of someone who might not be staying. He started coming to the bakery. Not every day, not in a way that announced itself. He would simply appear, sitting at the small table near the window, ordering a coffee, watching her work without interrupting it. Camille noticed on the second visit and said nothing. On the third visit, Destiny brought him his coffee with a smile so precise it could cut glass. You're back, Destiny said. I am, Kai said. She set the cup down with a particular kind of care that communicated everything. Let me know if you need anything. She walked back behind the counter and said to Camille, without lowering her voice nearly enough, He's here again. I see him, Camille said, not looking up from the dough she was shaping. Are you going to talk to him? I'm working. Camille. Destiny. I'm working. He sat for an hour. He ordered a second coffee. He watched her move through the bakery with the focus of someone studying something they'd been careless with and were only now learning to see properly. When he left, he nodded at her across the room. She nodded back. That was the whole of it. Meanwhile, Marcus had been building something quietly. He came to Kai on a Thursday with a folder and the particular expression of a man who had confirmed something he hoped was wrong. The surveillance on Camille, he said, sliding it across the desk. It's not external. It originated from inside. Kai looked up. Inside Ryan's operation? Deeper than that. Marcus paused. There's a rumor moving through the upper tier. Someone planted it. The story is that Camille has been feeding financial information to federal contacts. The room got very still. That's not possible, Kai said. I know. She doesn't know anything that would be useful to. I know, Marcus said again. The rumor is fabricated. I'm sure of it. But it's moving, and it's specific enough that people are starting to ask questions. Kai stood up and walked to the window. Charlotte's skyline sat outside it, bright and indifferent. Who started it? Still working on that. But Kai. Marcus waited until he turned around. Ryan knows. Everything after that moved fast. Mama Loretta arrived the following week, unannounced, with 2 suitcases and the energy of a woman who had assessed a situation from a distance and decided her physical presence was required. She reorganized the penthouse in one afternoon without asking permission and cleaned the bakery's back storage room the next morning without explanation. At dinner that evening, she looked at Camille directly and said, How long has this been going on? Which part? The eating alone part. Camille was quiet. A while. Mama Loretta nodded once, the way she nodded when something confirmed what she already knew. And does your husband know how you take your coffee? Camille laughed, short, a little hollow. No. Then that man needs to spend some time with himself before he spends any more time with you. She picked up her fork. A man who doesn't know how his wife takes her coffee after 3 years of marriage is a man who has not been paying attention. And a man who isn't paying attention cannot protect what he has. Camille said nothing, but she held on to the words. Kai heard them secondhand, Destiny told him, with no particular effort to soften the delivery. He said nothing. He went home. He sat at the kitchen table for a long time. Then he got up and opened every cabinet until he found where Camille kept the coffee, and he sat back down with her most recent delivery bag, and he read the entire label. The next morning, Camille came downstairs at 7 to find a single cup on the counter. No note. No performance. Just coffee, made the way she drank it. Exact proportions, correct temperature, the specific ratio she'd never once told him, but he'd apparently finally decided to observe. She stood there looking at it for a moment. Then she drank it slowly, with both hands around the cup, standing alone in the kitchen. And she allowed herself, privately, to feel something about it. It's an apology in beverage form, Destiny said when she told her. That's what it felt like, Camille said. What are you going to do about it? Nothing yet, Camille said. You don't undo 3 years with a cup of coffee. No, Destiny agreed. But you start somewhere. That same afternoon, while pulling a winter coat from the back of the closet to donate, Camille's hand found something she hadn't put there. 3 envelopes, each one sealed, each one dated in Kai's handwriting. Their first anniversary, their second, their third. She stood in the middle of the closet and looked at them for a long time. They had never been opened. She carried them to the bed and sat down with them in her lap. She didn't open them. She wasn't ready to open them. She just sat with the weight of what they represented. 3 years of something that had been written out, sealed up, and never crossed the distance of a hallway. 3 years of words that had existed in the same apartment as her without ever reaching her. She was not angry. Anger would have been easier. What she felt was something slower and heavier. Grief, maybe. The particular grief of realizing you were loved in a language you couldn't hear. She put them back. She went to make dinner. She set one plate. That night she lay awake for 2 hours listening to Kai move around on the other side of the apartment, thinking about the envelopes and the coffee and the almost smile from the wedding in Dilworth and the man standing outside the bedroom door with his hand on the frame, and none of it adding up to anything she knew how to hold. 3 days later, Ryan invited Kai to lunch. He did it the way Ryan did everything, pleasantly, as if declining were an interesting theoretical option rather than a practical one. They sat across from each other at a quiet restaurant downtown, and Ryan ordered without looking at the menu, and then he said, with the same tone he might use to comment on the weather, "There's a story going around about your wife." Kai kept his face neutral. "Tell me." Ryan told him. He watched Kai's face as he did it. Kai's first response was flat denial, immediate, certain, reflexive. But Ryan kept talking, and the details were specific in a way that planted something despite itself. A name, a date, a meeting that allegedly happened. And Kai, for just a moment, just a fraction of a second, hesitated. He caught himself, covered it, said, "It's not true," with full conviction. But the hesitation had happened, and Ryan had seen it. And somewhere across town Camille was pulling a tray of lemon cardamom tarts out of the oven with no idea that her name was sitting at a lunch table being handled like a liability. The black car was waiting when she came out to toss the afternoon trash. She saw it and understood immediately. The way you understand certain things when you've been married to a particular kind of man for 3 years and paid more attention than he realized. She went inside, told Destiny to call Marcus, untied her apron, and walked out. The man in the car didn't say much. He drove. 20 minutes later, she was in a room she didn't recognize, sitting across from Ryan, who looked exactly the way people look when they've never had to raise their voice because they've never needed to. "Thank you for coming," he said, as if she'd had a choice. "What do you want?" Ryan smiled slightly. He laid out the allegation like he was presenting a business case, measured, specific, disappointingly credible to someone who didn't know it was fiction. He cited a name, a date, a figure that apparently corresponded to something real in his organization's accounts. "I don't know anything about any of that," Camille said. "I believe you believe that," Ryan said pleasantly. "No." Her voice didn't waver. "I don't know anything about any of that because there is nothing to know. I make pastries. I run a bakery. Whatever story you've been sold, someone sold you a lie." The door opened. Kai walked in. Camille looked at him. He looked at her. And in the space of that look, she searched his face the way you search the face of someone you've shared a bed with for 3 years, reading every micro-expression, every flicker, every tell you've learned in proximity. She was looking for certainty. She was looking for, "Of course I know it's not true, I know you." What she found instead was a shadow, a fraction of a second where something moved across his face that wasn't certainty. It was there and gone in an instant, covered quickly, but she saw it. She had become very good at seeing the things Kai tried not to show. The room went quiet, and then Marcus walked in. He set a folder on the table and stood with the stillness of a man who had been waiting for this moment for 2 weeks. "The allegation is fabricated," he said, without preamble, without looking at Ryan. "Planted. The source is internal. Someone inside your own organization has been building a false paper trail to redirect federal attention. The name being used to do it is Mrs. Yoons because using her name creates a problem for Kai that makes him easier to control." He paused. "The actual contact feeding information to federal investigators is someone considerably closer to this table." The silence that followed was the loudest thing Camille had ever heard. Ryan's face didn't change. That was the frightening part. Not the anger she expected, but the absolute stillness of a man recalculating. Camille stood up. She looked at Kai one more time, at the relief washing over his face, the beginning of something he wanted to say, and she picked up her bag. We'll talk later, she said. Not warmly. Not coldly. Just as a fact. She walked out of the room and kept walking. If you've been with this story from the beginning, and if you're still here, you clearly have the patience for love stories that hurt before they heal. Go ahead and subscribe right now. There's more coming, and you don't want to find out you missed it. Back to Camille. She moved to her mother's that week. She didn't announce it dramatically. She packed a bag, told Kai she needed space, and left. Mama Loretta asked no questions and made no speeches. She simply made up the guest room and put a cup of tea on the nightstand and left Camille to whatever she needed to do with her silence. The exhaustion was the thing that surprised her most. She had expected fury, hot, righteous, the kind of anger that gives you energy. Instead, she felt like she'd been walking underwater for 3 years, and someone had finally let her stop. She was tired of the penthouse, tired of the quiet, tired of loving someone through glass and pretending the glass wasn't there. He doubted you, Destiny said on the phone that night. 1 second. That's all it was, but he doubted you. I know. And you've never once doubted him. Not even when you had reason to. I know that too. So what are you going to do? Camille looked at the ceiling of her mother's guest room. I don't know yet, she said. I need to think. 2 days later, she went back to the penthouse to get the rest of her things and found a notebook in Kai's desk drawer. Not hidden. Exactly. Just set aside in the particular way things are set aside when they're private without being secret. She opened it. 3 years. Page after page of her, written in Kai's careful, controlled handwriting. The way she laughed at her own jokes before the punchline. The specific hum she made when she was happy and working at the same time. A sentence she'd said once about her grandmother's kitchen. She cooked like she was arguing with someone and winning. That Camille had forgotten saying completely. Small, intimate, ordinary moments that he had carried quietly and recorded privately for reasons she didn't entirely understand and couldn't entirely dismiss. She sat on the floor of his office and read until she ran out of pages. He had not been absent. He had been watching from behind glass, cataloging everything he couldn't reach, keeping her in the only way he knew how when he believed that reaching for her openly would put her in the path of something dangerous. It was not a justification. It was not enough. But it was the truth, and she held it carefully because it mattered and it hurt in equal measure. Then Destiny called. He transferred the penthouse into your name, Destiny said, and her voice was strange. Not excited. Almost reverent. Deed's been signed, it's done. And there's a deposit in the Golden Hour account. Enough to cover a year of operations. No note. No conditions. I thought you should know. Camille sat with that for a long time after she hung up. Kai had disappeared. Nobody seemed to know where he was except Marcus, who wasn't saying. Ryan was arrested 11 days later. The operation folded without spectacle, the way operations fold when the evidence has been building quietly for long enough. Kai had resigned from his role the same morning he walked Camille out of that building, closed the office, released the staff, ended it the way he did everything, without noise, without ceremony, without drawing attention to the size of what he was giving up. 3 weeks passed, and then one morning, Camille arrived at Golden Hour at 6:30 a.m. to open up and found Kai standing outside on the pavement. He wasn't moving toward her. He wasn't preparing a speech. He was just there, still, quiet, present without pressure, exactly the way he'd been standing at the far end of that wedding reception the first night she ever saw him. She stood in front of him for a moment. Can you come inside? She said. He followed her in. I want to learn, he said, once they were inside and the lights were on and the oven was preheating. Whatever you'll teach me. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she went to the back and came out with a recipe card. My grandmother's sweet potato pound cake, she said. It's the hardest thing I make. Okay. You're going to fail the first time. Okay. Probably the second time too. I understand. He failed the first time. The texture was wrong, dense in the wrong places, dry at the edges. Destiny, who had arrived 40 minutes into the lesson, stood at the counter eating a croissant and watching with the energy of a woman thoroughly enjoying herself. Is that pound cake or a doorstop? She said. Destiny, Camille said. I'm just asking. He failed the second time too. Something with the butter ratio. Camille showed him again. Patient, precise, not performing patience, but actually feeling it, which surprised her. Destiny had moved on to commenting on his technique in real time. You're folding it like it owes you money, Destiny said. Destiny. But Camille was smiling. On the third attempt, something shifted. He moved slower, more carefully. He stopped trying to rush it and let it be what it needed to be. When it came out of the oven, it was right, dense and golden and warm, exactly what it was supposed to be. Camille sliced it, tasted it, and laughed. Not a polite laugh. The real one, loud, sudden, a little undignified, the one that came from somewhere deep and honest and couldn't be manufactured. Kai watched her laugh, and something in his face came undone. I have something to give you, she said, when the laughter had settled. She went to her bag and came back with 3 envelopes. He recognized them immediately. He said nothing. She opened the first one and read it aloud. His handwriting, his words, 3 years of things he had written and sealed and never handed over. She read all 3 of them, slowly, without rushing the hard parts. Somewhere in the second letter her voice went quiet, and somewhere in the third letter neither of them were pretending they weren't crying. Why didn't you give them to me? She asked, when the last one was done. Because I was afraid, he said. Not of you. Of what loving you openly would cost you. The life I was in, I thought distance kept you safer. It almost ended us. I know. Distance doesn't protect people, Kai. It just leaves them alone. He looked at her. I know that now. She folded the letters carefully and put them back in their envelopes. We start over, she said. From the beginning. Properly this time. That means you show up. That means you talk to me. That means I know you and you know me. Actually know each other, or this doesn't work. From the beginning, he said. Properly. I mean it. I know you mean it. A pause. I mean it too. 3 weeks after that, Golden Hour had a waiting list. The Meridian partnership was running in full swing, and 2 food publications had reached out about features. Camille had hired a second baker to handle the morning prep, and Kai was behind the prep counter in an apron, focused, flour on his forearm, working through the sweet potato pound cake for the 6th time because he had decided to get it exactly right. He was not performing improvement. He was not doing it for show. He was simply learning, humbly, the thing she had built her life around, the patience and the precision and the willingness to start over when something doesn't turn out. Camille was watching him from across the room when he finally looked up. She was already smiling when their eyes met. Not a polite smile, not the careful smile she had practiced for 3 years in a marriage that required her to manage her own expectations. The real one, unhurried, fully meant. He had got it. On the wall near the register, in a simple frame, was the photograph Destiny had posted all those months ago. Camille mid-laugh, lit up, alive, completely unaware she was being captured. The photograph that had pulled Kai out of his silence when nothing else had reached him. It wasn't a reminder of a hard time anymore. It was just a picture of a woman who had always known her own worth, even in the seasons when the person beside her couldn't see it. If this story moved you, if you've ever been Camille eating dinner alone standing at the counter, or Kai writing letters he couldn't hand over, let this video know it meant something. Like it, leave a comment telling us which moment hit hardest, and subscribe so you're here when the next one drops. Stories like this one don't find their audience by accident. You sharing it is how it travels. The silence kept a lot of things. In the end, it couldn't keep them apart. End.